Okay, so I'm so excited to be here, and I hope that you all had a chance to listen to the audio and do a little bit of homework. I know that it was probably maybe a little bit intimidating to just start drawing when you might feel like you don't know what you're doing, but we all have to start somewhere, right? And many times when we approach a blank piece of paper or a canvas, no matter how experienced we are, we don't feel like we know what we're doing. We just sort of have to trust and follow where we're led, you know. Of course, it does help to be shown and to have some practice, and that's what we're going to do. But we always have to start by exercising our creative muscles. A lot of times I liken it to exercising, even though I must admit I don't do much of that, but excuse me, the more that you practice and exercise, the better shape that you'll be in, right? So at least figuratively speaking. So here I'm going to just show you my process for doing these exercises and some of the materials that I have on hand, although your materials will probably be different, but that's okay. For this, I think that it doesn't matter what you have, and I kind of want to show you that, okay? So I have some different drawing utensils. I have just a regular number 2 pencil. I have a graphite stick. This one happens to be a 6B. This one is just a design drawing pencil, ebony, extra black, smooth drawing pencil. This is a white charcoal pencil, which just is mixed in right now. I don't really need that. Here I have a dip pen, or a nib pen, and then just some acrylic ink, so that's fun to play and draw with. And then I have a pit pen, a fine tip black pit pen. So if you have different things than this, that's great. If you have some similar things, that's also great. Here I have an old book, and I did not deface this book. It was already, I bought it at a yard sale, and it was already ripped up, and so I don't feel bad about tearing out the pages. These are wonderful to put a little bit of gesso on there, and then draw and scribble over the top. It makes great texture and a really nice background. So excuse me, if you have something like this, that's fun to have on hand. Here I have some circle templates, stencils, and so these will come in really handy. If you don't have any circle templates, that's okay too. You can always take something like a jar that's sitting around and use it to trace, or maybe just some of your art materials, take some of the lids, things like that, okay? You can also freehand your circles. Some people say like, oh my gosh, I can't draw a circle, but you don't have to, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I promise you that when we do our celestial faces or themes, you can draw a freehand circle well enough to suffice. So, just whatever. Anyway, here we're going to talk about some different paper. I have just a stack of copy paper, just inexpensive, plain old printer paper. That is great if you want to just draw lots and lots of faces and not worry about it being really precious, not worrying about messing up, something that is too valued. And also, you can, this is nice and thin, so you can always tear or cut if, the pieces if you want to. If you do something that you like, you can always tear it up or cut it out and stick it in a journal. And that's sort of how I feel about these scribble pads. This is just a kid's newsprint scribble pad that I bought at the dollar store. You can see I got on clearance for $1.50. So again, not very precious, but I love working on this paper. This is great because surprisingly, it actually takes a lot of media pretty well. And so a lot of times I'll work on this and then I will tear it up and actually put it on a canvas or put it in my journal. So I really recommend having a scribble pad like that. Also journals. If you have some blank journals, wonderful to start your practice in. These are a little bit nicer. I love this mixed media paper inside because you can work really wet, and it's just really nice paper. So if you have something like that, that's also excellent. And then finally, if you have some watercolor paper, again, just because it will take a lot of media, a lot of wet media especially. So if you want to paint, watercolor, use graphite, if you want to, you know, collage onto this, it's great. So any of these things that you happen to have will be wonderful. If you don't have much and you just have some copy paper or a scribble pad, that is also just right, okay? So I just don't want you to worry too much about your materials at this point. You know, as you progress, if you're already, you know, a mixed media artist that's been doing this for a while, then you probably have a lot of the materials on hand. If you don't, and you just have some basics, then I just want you to be comfortable and know that that will work. And as you progress and as you, you know, go through some of these exercises, you will find things that you are more drawn to and things that you want to start collecting for your art supply library, okay? So I know that in the audio I told you, you know, just to draw faces, and you probably were cursing at me saying like, but you're supposed to show me, and that is what I'm gonna do next. But I wanted you to do that on your own without having any, you know, other thoughts about what other things look like, what other faces look like, because this is how you will begin to you know, come up with your own style and your own language, your own visual language. So of course, a lot of times we look at other things and other inspiration in order to develop that. And of course, that's what we're going to do in this in these lessons. But I wanted you to start and just dive in, you know, sort of as a beginning point. But now I am going to go ahead and show you how I approach this, and some really good exercises for you that will help carry you forward into our next lessons in painting and making celestial faces and celestial themes, okay? Specifically moons, of course. So I just tore out a couple pieces of my newsprint off my scribble pad, and you can approach this one of two ways. You can either draw a bunch of circles, okay, like so, or take your template and draw maybe a bunch of different sizes right onto your newsprint. And again, it doesn't matter if you are using copy paper or watercolor paper or working in your journal, just go for it. So you can do that, and you can just put a whole bunch of circles and then begin to draw your faces, or you could also draw a bunch of faces, okay, on another page. And wherever you are, if you've drawn lots before, if you haven't, just dig in, okay? I will show you how I draw a face and sort of proportions, but you know, maybe you're just starting out, so you just want to draw a few quick sketchy lines and create a face, and then take your circle, again, whether it be something that you're going to trace or your circle template, and then draw your circles around your faces. The nice thing about doing it this way, I know it seems a little crazy, but the great thing is that you can practice your features, your eyes, your noses, your mouths, your expressions, without having to worry about the context or the other details of hair and face shapes and necks and things like this. So if you're just beginning, this is a great way to practice the face without worrying about a lot of other details, okay? So again, whether you're just doing little dots for eyes and maybe a little line for a nose and a little upturned mouth, you know, or maybe a little heart-shaped mouth, and that seems very remedial, but you know, it could ultimately make some very cute moon faces or celestial faces, because again, these can easily be turned into suns, okay, just by adding some rays around or some scribbly lines, and the color will define whether or not it's a moon or a sun. If you wanted to turn this into a crescent moon shape, then you would just take your circle template again and lightly draw on another line, and there you have a moon face with a crescent. So you kind of see my point. Even if you're just drawing basic little happy faces, this could be something really, really cute and turn into something as it evolves, okay? So let me, for those of you who haven't or don't draw a lot of faces, let's sort of dig into a little bit of a lesson on proportion. Okay, so I'm going to switch and just use my number 2 pencil right now. So here you have your circle, okay, and you might want to just very lightly sketch a line down the middle and then another line going across the middle the opposite way, sort of like a pie, making a pie shape. And then I'm going to switch pencils again because I want it to be a little bit darker so you can see. The eyes are generally halfway down the face. Whether or not you're drawing a moon or whether you're drawing a people face, you want to place your eyes approximately halfway down. This is just general rule of thumb. A lot of times it feels like it's not right because it will kind of feel like there's way too much forehead, but trust me that if you work this way, it will come out looking much more anatomically correct, I guess you could say. So you can start by just doing a couple little downturn lines, and then you can draw another line between your middle line and the bottom about halfway again, okay, and then another line between that line and the bottom line again, and that will be sort of the placement of the nose and of the mouth. Most of the time, not always, you know, you're gonna play with this and you'll feel what seems and looks and feels right to you, but the corners of the mouth will be approximately go to where the irises are, okay, the center point of the eyes. So even though that line might seem like it's really long, generally it looks correct when you do it, okay? So if you look at other faces, you can get different mouth shapes, different nose shapes and things like that. But a lot of times it's just easier to, you know, dig right in, and if you're not trying to do somebody's portrait, just give a few simple lines, a couple little dots, okay, a little bit of erasing there, a couple little nostrils. Maybe I want it to look a little happier, so I'm going to upturn that line for the mouth, and a couple eyebrows, just simple as that. And then you have a face, a base shape to begin working off of. I mean, I could almost, with a little bit of color and a little bit more value, leave it just like this. Let me erase some of these other lines. And almost have a face that I'm pretty happy with, you know? Definitely maybe draw some other rings around it, give it a little more shading. And I could easily see that this could translate onto one of my paintings, okay? So the more that you do this, obviously, the more comfortable you will become, and then you can start expanding on different face styles. A lot of times I will, and I'll definitely show you this when we start in on the painting, I will actually just make my eyes like big, dark, almond-shaped blobs, basically, and very dark, okay, because the eyes are set in. One thing to help you as you go along is to remember that wherever your face protrudes, so that would be your nose, your chin, your forehead, so basically like your T-zone, okay? Those are going to be areas that are in highlight. The very tip of your nose is your highest point generally, so that part is going to be in highlight. Wherever your face is recessed is going to be fall in shadow. So that will help you when you're creating your contours, and it will give you a lot more depth and value when you're drawing and painting. So again, you know, now I've drawn enough faces to where I don't really need too many to draw my guidelines too much. So, and you know, remember there's a reason why they make gesso and why they make erasers. If you make a mistake or feel that your placement is off, then you can gesso over it or erase it and start over. You know, do you want big, thick eyebrows? You know, do you want just little lines for eyebrows? And, you know, depending on where you, you know, the angle of your lines or the placement of your lines is going to determine if your face looks happy, sad, serious, serene. And so you can start playing with expression and emotion in a face as you go along. That is the awesome thing about just drawing, you know, over and over quickly without giving it way too much thought, okay? And surprisingly, or you will surprise yourself as you go along in exercises like this, and you continue to just crank out one face after another. You know, you'll be like, wow, this one's really cute, or this one, I really like this one for whatever reason, and then you can keep it, you can use it for reference, or maybe you will emulate yourself in another painting, or maybe you will expand on that and then copy it, or I'm sorry, and then cut it out and use it in a collage. You know, there's just so many ways and choices that you have as you are creating. So here I have these eyes all blacked out, and you're probably thinking that looks really strange, but you know what? You could take a little bit of gesso or maybe a white paint pen, and just with a couple touches of opaque white, you can transform this into eyeballs. So pretty fun, huh? I love experimenting and love to just play as much as time allows, and you know, see where it takes me. It's sort of like you know, intuitive painting, because we don't always know exactly, you know, we can set out to create something that we have in our mind's eye, but a lot of times it does not turn out the way that we, you know, preconceive it. So I say, why not just go with the flow? That's half the fun, is seeing where it all will lead. You know, and then of course you can shade, give them some cheeks up underneath the lip. There's usually a dark shadow, same up underneath the nose. So what I'm asking you to do is to just keep at it, keep going. I think one of the reasons that we tend to give up is because we just don't push far enough. At least I found that in a lot of my artwork throughout the years, is that I would just get frustrated because I felt I couldn't do it, or, you know, I wasn't doing it right. But The more that you just play and push yourself, the better it will get, and the easier it will get. So this one I think has potential, but I would want to keep going and probably, you know, paint on there or whatever. I do want to show you some of my other faces. I've done a whole bunch here, just in the way that I've shown you, by drawing a lot of circles or just by doodling, you know, little happy faces and drawing circles around them. But I have a whole stack here. And some I really like, and some I think are, you know, I don't know, not the greatest, but I don't, sort of like my own cooking. I don't feel like I always have to love it, as long as it's edible. So, okay, so here, this one's kind of interesting, and I'll show you. I took just a woodless graphite stick, and this is sort of fun because this would be more how you would see the moon when it's up in the sky at night and you see a full moon and it's just sort of shadowed. You know, it's not real definitive features. So here you could just scribble in, and again, when you start to get a feel, or if you already do know where your features go, it is not hard at all to just sort of scribble that in. And I feel like this is how the moon looks up in the sky at night, you know, without any real definitive features. So that would be kind of a cool way to do the moon in a painting or in your journal. See, quick, so quick and simple. Here it's a little more illustrative, you know, and here I did the eyes the way I showed you a few minutes ago with just some white dots of gesso. Here's a whole bunch. This one I think is so sweet, and it is just the simplest little thing. You know, just taking two downturned lines, maybe a couple little eyelashes, a little upturned nose, and then a little heart-shaped mouth. Okay, then take your circle stencil and go right around it. So depending on, you know, I would not probably use this in a more serious painting, but I would use this in a greeting card illustration. And the same with this one. This one's kind of funny. I use, instead of trying to do any kind of serious nose, I basically just did a long rectangle, you know? So many different ways that you can, you know, create faces, because they're always going to need to be different depending on the context that you're creating, you know, or what you're creating. Here I did some on watercolor paper, and then painted them using a little bit of gesso and a little bit of Neocolor crayon, and this one just was a touch of watercolor. So you see there is a method to my madness, and it will really help you if you continue to do this and just have fun with it throughout the week. It will really help you for our next lesson, which is when we are going to paint on texture using acrylic and wood icing. So I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you so much. Shoot for the moon and reach for the stars. See you next week. And I'll be on Facebook. If you have any questions, you know, I'm here and available to you. Have a great week.